Richard dropped out of school in the 9th grade. His first arrest was in 1977 for marijuana possession. He moved to California at age 22. His drug habits went from weed to cocaine addiction, like full-on addiction. I'm not saying that you should be you should be, snorting weed, period, but, he just was a full-on addict at this point. And burglary. Hey, Ivy. He was arrested twice in the LA area for auto theft in 1981 and in 1984, and noticeably began to neglect his personal hygiene. And this was very true if you look in his teeth. His teeth were really distinctive, and they were not very well taken care of. In 1984, a 9-year-old girl named May Linda Long was raped, stabbed, and then strangled to death. Her body was found hung by her blouse in a ritual-style killing hanging over a pipe in her apartment's basement. If you can picture Christ on the cross, that's basically how she had looked, and her head was dropped and the chin was down. Recalled Schneider, "It was a sad sight to see. She kind of got to me. Young Linda was playing with her 8-year-old brother when she lost a dollar bill and she had gone looking for it. The boy wandered away and eventually he was the one who unfortunately had to find her. It wasn't until 2009 that Ramirez was tied to her murder through DNA evidence, but no charge against him was made. It is possible another second person is tied to the murder, a convicted felon who is not publicly identified." June 28, 1984. Jenny Vinco, 79, Glassell Park. Her throat was slashed so badly she was almost decapitated. And then after killing her, he continued on with burglary. Jack Vincro, her son, later went on to testify how he found her body in court. Vincro said that he and his mother lived at the same apartment building, and the last time he saw her alive was the afternoon of June 27, 1984. He said he found his mother's body nearly 24 hours later when he entered her unlocked apartment. March 17, 1985, Dale Okazaki, 34, and survivor Mia Hernandez, 20 years old. Dale was 2 weeks away from her 35th birthday before Richard Ramirez shot her to death. She was born in Hawaii and had attended local schools, including Pasadena City College. She was one of 3 children and her family was very close to her. Her interests included skiing, planning parties, shopping, and making holidays out of even the most common and mundane occasions. Her sister said that, quote-unquote, it just made her happy to make other people happy. Whatever she bought, she shared. When she went to the zoo, she bought everyone panda pins. When she bought a gigantic bag of popcorn on sale, she divided it into 20 small containers to give to friends. A coworker recalled, "One time I told her I had to spend the weekend painting my house. Saturday morning, she showed up to the doorstep, paintbrush in hand." Ms. Okazoki had been taking classes in cake decorating, flower arranging, computer programming, and most recently, self-defense. "We talked about how scary rape was and what we could do to protect ourselves," a friend said. Dale had left her parents' home and returned to her own home when she was murdered. Her roommate was assaulted, but survived and called 911. Dale's funeral had so many people in attendance that they had to add more seating. Her mother, who still cries at the mention of her daughter's name, said, "You think it won't happen to you, and when it happens to you, what can you say? It will never go away. The pain." Hey, Chirac. Mia Hernandez, 21, was 21 when she went to court, was wounded in the hand, and identified Ramirez as the man who crept up on her with a gun on March 17, 1985, as she was about to enter her condominium in suburban Rosemont. She had pulled into the garage, and Richard tried to shoot her in the face, but she put her hands up like this to defend herself, and when he shot her, she had her keys still in her hand from the car. When he shot her, the bullet actually ricocheted off of the keys. Within an hour, Richard pulled 30-year-old Veronica Yu out of her car at Monterey Park and shot her. She died upon arriving at the hospital. She was a student at the Art Center College of Design in Pasadena. 2 weeks later, Richard broke into the home of 64-year-old Vincent Zazzara and Machine Whiter. He shot the man while he slept, and his wife woke up, and Richard beat her, tied her up, and demanded to know where her valuables were. While he searched the room, she escaped the binds and grabbed her husband's shotgun, but unfortunately it wasn't loaded. This made Richard angry, and he shot her 3 times and then mutilated her body with a knife from her own kitchen. He poked out her eyes and kept them in a jewelry box that he took with them. The bodies were discovered by their son. Vincent owned a pizza parlor and was described as... I thought there was more here. Well, if you look them up, there may have been a problem with translating my notes from one source to another, but if you look them up, you can find more information on the family, and I highly recommend you do to, respect and do some research on the victims yourselves. I apologize for that. On May 14th, 1985, William Matco Doy, or Bill Doy as some called him, age 65, was murdered. His wife was assaulted. Doy was in a Japanese relocation camp during World War II and later joined the highly decorated 442nd U.S. Army Regimental Combat Team. He retired from his sales job with Santa Fe Trucking. He loved his 4-year-old grandson so much. He had just bought a brand new Ford and planned to drive around the country with Lillian, his 56-year-old wife. Now, I got 3 different dates for this event, so I'm not 100% sure which one is true. I wish I could say which source was more credible, but I'm not 1,000% sure. If you want to look for yourself, I would encourage it. But it was in the year 1985. Ramirez drove a stolen car to Monrovia, California, and stopped at the house of Mabel Mabel, 83, and her disabled sister Florence Nettie Lang, who was 81 years old. Finding a hammer in the kitchen, he bludgeoned and bound Lang in her bedroom, then he used an electrical cord to shock the woman. After raping Lang, he used Belle's lipstick to draw a pentagram on her thigh, as well as the walls of both bedrooms. The women were found 2 days later, alive but comatose. Belle later died of her injuries. Mabel was the center of her family and helped her entire family through college. She was described as a warm and caring person, and she loved America so much that she even paid to have funding so that way the Statue of Liberty could be kept in good shape. May 30th, 1985. Carol Kyle, 41, was his next victim. He held her and her son captive at gunpoint and bound them with handcuffs. He made her show him where the family valuables were. She showed him, and he raped her. He told her not to look at him or he'd cut her eyeballs out. Hey, Blue Knight. Her and her son both survived. July 2nd, 1985. Mary Louise Cannon, 70, Arcadia. Beaten and throat slashed, murder, burglary. He broke into the apartment of 28-year-old schoolteacher Patty Elaine Higgins, who he brutally beat, assaulted, and nearly decapitated. Thank you. He slashed her throat, and it was only then that the police were absolutely sure that there was a serial killer in California. Mary was a 2-time cancer survivor. She'd been in a minor accident that day, a minor accident before, and she was supposed to be healing up for her trip in Australia, which she would attend with other seniors of her own age group. Throughout all of this, Richard would feel that Satan and demons were watching over him. He would make people swear on Satan. He had no friends and was ironically very untrusting of people. Often he'd stay at his room from sundown to sunrise, shooting up cocaine, watching MTV, listening to all of his favorite music, which was usually heavy metal, and imagining these violent sexual scenarios that he would often play out later in real life. July 7th, 1985, 61-year-old Joyce Cecile Nelson was asleep in her living room couch. Ramirez beat her to death with his fists and then kicked her very, very hard in the head. Thank you. She was 2 years away from retirement, which she had been looking into. Her son, Don Nelson, and his wife, Patty Nelson, went from being pro-death penalty to anti-death penalty. He said in an interview, quote unquote, "Even today, I don't think there really is closure. How do you find closure when you have to go to a grave to visit your mom?" July 8th, 1985, he broke into 63-year-old psychiatric nurse Sophie Dickman's home. He stole her jewelry, beat her, attempted to sodomize her, but gave up, and then made her swear on Satan that she wouldn't tell anyone he was there. July 20th, 1985, Ramirez bought a machete. Using the stolen Toyota, he drove to a place 9 miles from downtown LA. Hey, American. He went to enter the home of 66-year-old Leila Kneeling and her 68-year-old husband, Maxon. But before he did, he knelt down and prayed to Satan, chanting, quote-unquote, sorry. By all that is evil, I, your humble servant, invoke Satan to be here and accept this offering. His next words were, quote-unquote, rise and shine, mother effers. The machete didn't kill Max, so Richard used his guns to kill both Max and Leila. Ramirez began staying at the Cecil Hotel, and he would often use his stolen money to pay for both the rooms, cocaine's, and sex workers. At around 4:15 a.m., he broke into the home of the Canova family. He murdered Shenarong by shooting him in the head while he slept. He then raped his wife, Sam Kidd, on the same bed next to her dead husband. He bound their 8-year-old son before dragging Sam Kidd around the house to show him where any of the valuables were. He made her swear on Satan that she wasn't hiding anymore and then assaulted her. The family had immigrated to America from Thailand a decade earlier. The last time Shenarong's sister saw her brother alive was on her daughter's birthday. He had less victims than Bundy, but around the same amount of Ted. He had less victims than, Ted Bundy, around the same amount of victims as Jeffrey Dahmer. But he did it a lot more closer together, if that makes sense. Like, his killings were very closer together than most serial killers. He'd only go 2 weeks or so before killing again. Some of them would go a month or so. His sister said, quote-unquote, he had been to Mexico and bought her back a beautiful leather jacket. He loved her like he did his own, talking about her daughter. It was Sam Kidd's description, quote-unquote, brown skin with bad teeth, remember we mentioned bad hygiene, 30 to 35, 150 pounds, and 6'1" or so. So the police, the little sketch that they made, was released to the press. The media then gave the unknown killer the name the Nightstalker. On August 6, 1985, Richard